Hello everyone and welcome to another Project Cars discussion video where I'm going to be talking about how best to use a controller with this game and whether it's even possible in the first place. So the footage that you're watching is one of the first races that I ever did on Silverstone on this game, and one of the very earliest races I did in this car, and it was a very challenging experience because the time that this was set to meant that the sun was really low in the sky, and in some places on the track you literally just couldn't see what you were doing, and that was incredible to me that, you know, most racing games that I've played wouldn't have that, just wouldn't have that aspect of not actually being able to see what's going on. Especially down this straight here, it was very hard to pick a braking point, and I don't drive very well, but it's an entertaining race nevertheless. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. My lap time must have been about 10 seconds per lap off the pace of the best lap that you can get around here during this race. You know, it was still in the very early days. I actually went back onto Silverstone on my own in a time trial and got one of the top 10 best lap times in the entire world. So, you know, the pace is there with a little bit of practice. It's just when you throw yourself into an online race like this, in these tricky conditions, you can't expect to do very well straight away. But it's an entertaining race nevertheless. So, using a controller on Project Cars. You can use a controller as much or as little as you want. Now, the game is designed to be a simulator game. That is, it's designed to be like those top-end PC racing simulators that I mentioned in the previous video. It's not trying to be sort of a Gran Turismo or a Forza Motorsport. Those kind of games, they make it as accessible as possible to have mass appeal. So they may compromise a little bit on the physics or the realism of the driving in those games to make it a little bit more accessible, to make it possible to sort of boot up the game straight away with a controller on whatever console that you get and drive reasonably well, or even perfectly straight away with a controller. That's the compromise that those games make, whereas Project Cars doesn't do that. You know, it's not what it's all about. It wants to be as real as possible, as much of a simulator as it possibly can. So when you come to use this, you know, get this game first up with a controller, it doesn't mean to say that it isn't accessible. So if you have a controller, you can put on all the assists, go into career mode, turn the AI down to 10% or whatever the lowest thing is, and, you know, go off every corner and still win races and just gradually improve that way. It doesn't mean to say that it isn't accessible. The problem more so comes when you want to race online and start to be competitive with other people around the world, because really the game does come alive with a steering wheel. You know, it's intended to be used with a steering wheel. You can use a controller, and some of the best lap times on the leaderboards are set with controllers, but the game is meant to be used with a steering wheel because that's just the way that it's been designed. It's designed to be a proper racing simulator. It's designed to, you know, that's the way that it's meant to be, that you're really racing with a steering wheel and having the sort of the feeling of racing a real car. So what you may find is that as you start to take off all the assists, you know, start to improve a little bit, start to get a little bit better, and start to try to find extra bit of lap time from different places, you may find that the controller is lacking a little bit in terms of what you can do with it. And this isn't something that console gamers are used to. Now, this is something that PC gamers are very used to, you know, not necessarily to do with controllers, but in terms of having to set up the game. You know, PC gamers always have to fiddle about with various different aspects of the game, whether it's graphic options, especially on racing games, you know, things like force feedback settings and steering wheel settings, all kinds of different things. PC gamers are generally used to having to do that. Now, this is, as I mentioned in the previous video, Project Cars is trying to be one of those PC games, but for console. And this isn't something that console gamers are used to doing. You know, console gamers are used to just picking up the controller, putting in the game, and being able to be straight on the pace, and at least be successful with it. That's not what you can do with this game. Now, that may not be something that you necessarily like, or may not be to your taste. Fair enough, you know, this, as I mentioned in the previous video, this game might not necessarily be for you if that's the case, but it will reward you for putting in that little bit of extra effort to get those settings right and figuring out what's right for you. So when it comes to using a controller, it's very person dependent, you know. It's not necessarily going to be the same for everybody, and you need to find some settings that are right for you. There are a ton of settings in the options for Project Cars that will basically allow you to change anything that you want about how your controller reacts to your inputs. So steering dead zones, steering sensitivities, a whole boatload of things that you can change. And to really get the right thing for you, you're going to have to play around with it a little bit. You're going to have to put some time in, change these settings, go back into a race, find out if it's okay or if it's made it worse, and then, you know, go back and change it again. That's just what this game is about. It's not like those, you know, typical console racing games where you just get it handed to you. So the other thing that you kind of need to do with this is look around on the internet. You need to be looking on forums, looking on different videos on YouTube, all sorts of different things. There's a lot of information that's out there, and it's basically a big community of people who try to basically find out the best options through trial and error. Now, this isn't necessarily going to be the best options for everybody, but generally people try to find good starting points so that they can then, you know, fine tune for their own things. Now, because I use a steering wheel, I haven't really played around with the controller settings all that much. You know, I've played the game with a controller and I've thought, you know, it's not too bad. The default settings could be improved based on just my own personal style of using a controller, but I can still use it. Having said that, there are lots of people who do use a controller, and because of that, there's a lot of information already out there for people who do want to use a controller, want to improve their settings for the controllers and make it just a bit of a better and more controllable experience. You know, if you start to turn the assists off, you're going to want to change the settings that you have for the controller, because honestly the default settings just aren't going to be enough for you to do well, especially if you're racing online, especially if you're racing against people with a steering wheel. So what I'm going to do is leave a few links in the description. There's a good video by pCARS who goes over some controller settings that he has, which seems to have helped a few people out. I'm going to leave a few links to a few forum posts which explain some settings that other people have found that work, and also a few posts that explain what the settings mean. And this is something that you have to do with these sorts of games, especially something like Project Cars. It's not enough just to blindly go into the settings page and start changing settings randomly. You need to be understanding what each setting does, so that if you go into a race and find that, oh well, that hasn't worked, it feels a bit too loose in that corner, you can go back into the settings and change the thing that's going to make it less loose in a corner. So you need to be able to understand what these things are doing. And it's the same for car tuning as well. I'm no doubt sure that we'll focus on car tuning in future videos, because it is quite a complicated subject and a lot of people have trouble with it. But it's the same sort of thing, you know. It's no good just taking a random tune off the internet or blindly changing factors of a car tune setup. You need to be understanding what each part of the tuning phase means, so that when you find that something's wrong or something can be improved with the way that your car drives, you can go into the tuning setup and only change the thing that's going to affect the problem that you have. So it's the same with the controller setup, you know. You've got to be fine-tuning it all the time, figuring out what works for you. Again, you know, I'm going to leave some links in the description that will allow you to get some ideas on where to start with that, and hopefully get an idea of what you need to be doing. But ultimately, it's up to you to put in the effort if you really do want to be competitive on this game with a controller and have the best experience that you can with a controller. It's up to you to put in a little bit of that effort to make it better for you. And as I said, you know, this isn't something that console gamers are used to, and it may not be something that you particularly enjoy doing or particularly want to do. But that's what Project Cars is, you know. It isn't compromising on that realism, so that you know to make it easy. It is as real as it possibly can be. It's one of the best racing simulator games for a console, and the price for that is that you just have to put in a little bit of effort for yourself to make that a possibility. So yeah, that's where I want to come with this, you know. Trying to change the mindset of what you should expect with this game. You know, it's not going to just hand it to you on a plate. You are going to have to put in a little bit of work to fine-tune all of these details, because it is very different to everybody else, every other game that you might have experienced on a console. But it gives you the option to do that. That's the one thing about it. It gives you all of these options that you can change and you can fine-tune. So it expects you to be able to do that, to get the perfect thing that's right for you. And it's not going to be, as I said, it's not going to be the same for everybody, and that's the beauty of it. You know, you're going to have to fine-tune it for yourself and your own personal driving style. So yeah, this is the last part of the last lap in this footage. Pretty crazy how it all ends up so close together after a pretty shocking race. Some more improved performances will be coming later on, I promise. But yeah, I do manage to sneak up the inside here as those two go wide, and get those two places right on the last lap going into the last corner. So it worked out okay, but yeah, it's tricky. It's a tricky game, you know. You've got to change your mindset with this. You're not going to be able to just go straight into it and be able to be competitive. You are going to have to work at it. So the next video is going to be a steering wheel buying guide, you know, the other side of this game. And if you are looking to buy a steering wheel, I'll hopefully be able to help you with what to buy and what to look for whatever price range that you're going for. So thanks a lot for watching, everyone. I really do appreciate it. Leave all your comments down below in the description and all that kind of stuff. And maybe if you found some good settings for your own controller, leave those in the description as well, and see if you can help each other out. So thanks a lot for watching, everyone. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.